Good morning, good morning. We have sound up on here. Hi from Australia. How's it from Hawaii? What is it? Morning time over there for you guys, yeah? Just like here. 2 or 3 hours. Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Just gonna diddle around here for another little bit until we get to 10 o'clock. Catch everybody who's got it on their calendars for that precise time. 7 a.m. and a day ahead. That's kind of a cool chord change I just stumbled upon, is if you play 3 on the top string, open C string, and then first fret on the E string plus the high D on the 5th fret. It's kind of a stretch. And then you move the middle finger down 1 fret on the top string. And then C. That's why you diddle, is so you figure out stuff like that. Create some of your own golds to play that you came up with. Brazil's in the house. Feeling so global right now. Something I guess we could start with for the few who are watching right now is the traditional warm-up exercise. If you don't know this, it's super great for getting your hands going in the morning. I should probably play it here a few times to get the cold out of my fingers, but basically you play 1 finger per fret on each string. So if you start on the top string and play just 1st fret, 2nd fret, 3rd fret, 4th fret. But the idea is you use 1 finger per fret. Don't just slide your finger up. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you do the same thing on the next string down. 1, 2, 3, 4. Next string down. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you can go backwards as well. Not supposed to sound nice, and it doesn't really capture the exact chromatic scale, but it's a pattern to make your fingers work and to kind of practice getting your hand in sync. So if you wanted to examine it from several different angles, is you could change what your right hand does as far as the approach. You could play like down picks with your thumb. You could play down picks with your index finger if you have a fingernail. You could play thumb down, index finger up. You could do index finger down and up if you have an index nail. Right? You could even do, if you were into more like classical flamenco stuff, you could play with more than 2 fingers on a string. You can do 3. Be like, right? It'd be like middle finger, index finger, thumb, back to middle, I think. That's not really my wheelhouse. But just by using those different picking techniques, you can challenge yourself to get different levels of coordination going on. So for instance, like if I was to just play that out of my back pocket, I would probably play down and up with my index finger, because that's the style I've adopted over the years, or one of styles. If I'm playing just lead stuff, usually I'll play like kind of like I have a flat pick glued to my finger. It's sort of like the Hawaiian style Troy Fernandez sort of thing, but you just play down, up, down, up. And the idea is to just be as even as possible. Make sure you're right on the timing. You could do it with a metronome if you wanted, and make sure you're playing it perfectly. If you're not playing it perfectly, you got to go slower. The idea is to do it perfectly, and as you get better, you can go faster. But it just helps, it's just a coordination thing, gets your fingers going. And I find that it's helpful if I have like just limited time to kind of get warmed up. That's usually what I'll play. It's just like da 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 da. Just go through the frets, and then maybe play a couple of chords. And obviously that's not an ideal scenario when you have to just play like that, but it's better than nothing, and it's fairly quick as far as warming you up goes. Merry Christmas, David. All right. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Gonna wait a couple more minutes, pick up the stragglers, and then we'll get the show on the road. Kind of the preview is I've been thinking about strumming, because I saw on Reddit somebody was asking about strumming and strumming patterns, and I really hate teaching strumming, but I have figured out over the years a way to usually help people think about it a little bit easier, and to take a strumming pattern that sounds really stiff and loosen it up. And there's a trick that can force you to play it a little bit more free and to fit in the rhythm a little easier. So we'll talk about that today, and maybe some scrubbing if we run out of time, or if I run out of material on the strumming front. We'll see. Uh-oh, where does it go from there? Nope. That's all right. That is. Mele Kalikimaka. It's amazing how fast you forget things. I just played that a couple weeks ago at the Gaithersburg virtual ukulele fest thing. That had a kind of a convention for ukulele performers and instructors, and there was a bunch of us playing like one song a piece, and I played that, and it was better than that when I played it there. But just a couple weeks. It's not one of my regular songs, and it's gone from my mind already. Okay, so Strumming. I hate teaching strumming because people always ask, what is the strumming pattern for this song? Or how do I strum this? Or teach me some strumming patterns. And there's not often a method to their madness. They only want to know strumming because they kind of think that's the answer. And people who know my teaching and what I do is I try and teach you how to fish. It's like, I don't want to give you a fish. I want to teach you how to fish so you can be self sufficient in the future with your music. And so with strumming, I feel like strumming patterns are kind of like, here's a fish kind of a thing. And what I would like to share with you is a little bit more how to fish, how to stay with the music and sort of create your own strumming pattern. Because a lot of times when we're starting, we don't know exactly the places we should play. And if you don't know the places that you should be playing, you kind of lean on an external thing that you try and then put into your body, and it doesn't always come out nicely. And a lot of times it ends up sounding kind of robotic. And that is too bad because that's totally not what we want to do with music. You want it to flow naturally. And so what I like to show people is it's basically a timing grid that your strumming can go on. And all it is just dividing a bar into 8 pieces. You have your down strums, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you have the up strums that would go in between those, the ands, and. So altogether, you end up with 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Super simple stuff. But really, this is the basis of keeping your strumming natural and in time. Because any song that you play in 4/4, there's going to be a way that you can put that grid along with the song or around what's happening in the song. And a lot of times what happens when people try and learn a strumming pattern or read something a strumming pattern off of a page that they saw somewhere, like, oh yeah, the strumming pattern is down, up, 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 down, up, X, down, up, right? It doesn't mean much in that context if you can't relate it to the music somehow. And so by having this grid, you can sort of give yourself training wheels for the strumming by following this and knowing that most strums that you play and most strums that you see written down are going to be somewhere on, down, and up. And so you have those 8 spaces. You can keep the rhythm groovy by locking into one of those 8 spaces. And if the strumming pattern goes beyond the 8 spaces, and you're not sure how to play it just inherently, then it's one of those things where maybe it's best if you just come up with an approximation and don't get super worried about trying to do it the right way. Okay, so to put this in practice, let's just play it together. So just the down and up, right? Just to prove to yourself that you can do it. Just play the X chord, mute your strings, and strum down and up with me. 1, 2, ready, go. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. This is the basis of most everything you're going to strum. It's on this grid. And what happens is you leave things out when you don't want them. So now, while staying on the grid, just play the down strums. Your hand is doing the exact same thing, except you're missing the upstrokes. You're not playing the upstrokes because your hand is going a little bit further away from you to go around the strings on the way up. And then go back to down and up. And then next is to just play the ups. And again, your hand is missing on the way down. But it still looks like it's doing the same thing, right? It looks like this, but it just sounds like the up strum, right? So that's pretty straightforward. Most people can play that. That's just your basic chalang-a-lang or whatever if you were to swing it. I think every ukulele player is like, along with the ukulele, when they buy their ukulele, it's like, here's your ukulele. You can play the chalang-a-lang strum. It's just something that you inherit with the instrument. But what gets more tricky is when you start playing strumming patterns where you have back to back of the same direction of strum, right? Like down, down, up, down is a common one that's kind of like the first real brain bender strum a lot of people learn. It's like, oh, I can't do it. And you try and think down, down, up, down, and it just ends up sounding like a robot. And the trick with these is to continue to stay on the grid. Your hand continues to do this the whole time. All that's going to happen is you're going to subtract the strums that you don't need. So down, down, up, down. Let's look at the first little bit is down, down. In order to get two downs in a row on the grid, we're going to go down. Then you've got to go up and down. So that's just basically the first three spaces of on the grid. We're just leaving out the first up strum. Down, down. Right? The trick with this is it forces you to make the up strum even when your brain is thinking down. If you're thinking down, down, a lot of times your body doesn't compute the up movement that you need in order to get to the next down. So you end up going down and then panicking because your hand's in the wrong place and you get all caught up and you miss the timing. So by staying on the grid and knowing that just this is happening the whole time and all you're doing to create the strumming pattern is miss in the correct places, then you're going to be able to you're automatically moving in the right direction so that when it's time to go down again, you can do that instead of being stuck on the bottom and it needing it to be a down. Okay, so down, down, up, down. After the two downs, you have the first up. And because of the way it sits in the strumming pattern, the down, up is going to be back to back. So you have down, down, up, and then you're going to miss another down because you need two ups in a row. Down, down, up, down, down, and then you have the up, but you've got to miss to go down again. It's a little confusing, and this is why I really hate teaching strumming, is because it ends up being more confusing than it actually is. Just do it. And that's why with this grid, you can just kind of you can be playing music without actually having the strum down. Just by doing this, you're in time with the song, even if you're not sure what the strumming pattern is yet. So down, down, up, down, right? And then the last up, down, you're just dropping your hand. But if you watch what my hand's doing, it's doing this grid thing the whole time. So here's the grid. Down, down, up, down, 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 up, down. That's the motion you want your hand to make. Click, 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 click. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Down, up. Yeah, it's super hard to play the strum and say down, up, down, up. But that's what your hand is doing. It's continuing the whole entire time. And if you've been trying to force the strum out by thinking down, down, up, down, that's really where the hindrance of thinking about a strumming pattern comes in, is that is not natural. And so just by playing it and keeping your hand moving the whole entire time on that grid, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and as long as you can keep this steady, you're going to be in time. And that means you could play down, down, up, down wrong, and it would still be in time. It would still be musical. Because a lot of times you hear people, they do down, down, up, down, up, or other variations where there's like an extra strum. All they're doing is they're just dropping their hand onto the strings in a place where normally you would miss. That's all that's happening, but it's still on this timing. Okay, so what I like to do to sort of drive this home for folks is to collect random numbers and assign them to a spot on the grid. And you'll find that you can play these things with a little bit of concentration on the grid and musically, even though they're really random and they don't make a lot of sense. And if you can do these and figure these out, then you should be able to play pretty much any strumming pattern you see written down, provided it fits within eighth notes. Because when we divide the bar into 8 pieces, you're getting eighth notes: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and those those are eighth notes. So just to keep it simple, we'll use number 1. So we've got a real solid start strum on the 1, and then it's nice to have an odd number and an even number. So 1, let's say 1 and 4. And so if you count your way through it, 1 and 1, 2, 3, 4 would be the up of 2. So we're going to play on 1 along with 2 and. So 1 and 2 and. The trick is to not think about it isolated, though. The trick is to make your hand go on the grid and make the movements, and then you just touch the strings or move in towards you to play the strum when you need it. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So that is just one intentionally weird combination of strums that you can add. But because your hand is moving and you're basically linking what your hand is doing to the count of the music. And if you do that, you're always going to be in time no matter whether you play or not. And a lot of times what strumming is it's bringing emphasis to the places you play by not playing in other places, right? If you were to just play this, the strumming pattern would be super boring, and it would be kind of lifeless to have a song like that was just, so straight and boring. So, but if you leave a couple strums out, it gives emphasis and sway to what is there. And so just by doing that and leaving a couple strums out, you're creating a little bit more interesting strumming pattern, even if it's not perfect, even if you're not really nailing what you want and or what you've seen written down or whatever. It's still going to be musical because you're in time. Let's try a different collection of numbers. Let's do 2 and 7. Okay, so the 2 is going to be 1 and. So 1 and then 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is going to be 4. So 1 and along with 4, right? So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and you could add three different strumming places. For instance, let's add 6. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 would be 3 and. So now we have 1 and 3 and plus 4. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. It's not necessarily going to be the best strumming pattern the world has ever heard, but if you can figure these out and you can make your hands do this the whole time while staying with the count, you're going to be in pretty good shape for feeling where different accents help move the music along. If you get used to feeling the pull of those off beats and those on beats, then you're going to have an easier time making your own strumming patterns, which is really the end goal, is being able to come up with things on your own, or just listen to something, identify where the accents are, and just strum it because you're used to, where the hard beats are in the music, and you can just recreate that on your ukulele. So that's a good exercise. If you have a hard time coming up, you can use like random number generator, or if you have 8-sided dice or whatever, you roll the dice or just pick numbers out of a hat. But by practicing that and forcing yourself to put strums intentionally on the grid and keep your hand moving the whole entire time, you are, I think, in my experience and from what I've seen as a teacher, you're doing yourself a big favor in being able to feel music and timing and get your strumming a little bit more hip. Any questions about that? We're running with a little bit smaller class today, but that's all right because we've got replays. Hi, everybody watching the replay days from now, weeks from now, years from now. If you got any questions, post them up. Otherwise, we can continue on and try and come up with some other stuff related to that. While we're kicking around here, let's try another one. Another couple of random numbers. 3 and 5 and 6. 3, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. That's beat 2. I say 5 is going to be beat 3. And 6 is going to be 3 and. 2, 3, 3 and. Is that what I said? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Right? Just by creating that little drill for yourself, that's really good strumming practice of intentionally leaving things out. Okay. So if nobody has any questions about strumming, really, I feel like that is the basis that most people should be taking away and using in their strumming daily lives. I'm not a big fan of like looking up strumming patterns and learning strumming patterns. Instead, I would rather see somebody do this along with the song that they're playing and experiment with leaving things out. Leave a couple strums out, see which way you want the feel to go. And just by doing that, you're going to start building a library of sounds and accents that are going to serve you well in figuring out other songs. I don't know. I'm just wondering if I should try and figure out a strumming pattern for a song on the spot, off the top of my head. Okay, so just for instance, how does it go? Okay, Won't Back Down by Tom Petty. If I'm going to play along with that song, and I won't back down, and I won't back down. That's the musical pattern. That's the rhythm of the song. Da 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 da. Right? So that's what I want my hands to be doing for the most part while I'm playing the song. And what I want to do is figure out the accents that I want to add, and those accents are going to be basically my strums, and the non-accents are going to be where I don't strum. So if I'm playing that song, dun 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 dun, like for me, those are the hits. Bum bum bum. You don't necessarily want to always follow the words, but in that case, with that song and that instrumentation, that's sort of where the band is kind of leaning is on those words. So. So I've got a couple downs and an up in there. So and when you're just starting, if you want to just keep the down and up going the whole entire time, that's fine, and just accent the chords. And an accent is just where you play harder than the rest of what you're playing. So you could do that to get started, and maybe that'll help people hear it a little bit easier. But if I'm just playing the down and ups, I could just play it straight, pretty lifeless. But if I start adding accents, and then if I wanted to go the extra bit and get rid of my sort of extra down and ups that I don't need, that aren't part of the accents, I could just drop them out. But my hand still moving the whole entire time because I'm locked into that rhythm. Back, down, right? That's super important, is staying locked into and knowing where that's going to be. And in that case with the song, I believe you're following the hi-hat of the drum. So the drum's going tss, 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 tss. If you follow that with your strumming, that is going to oftentimes be your grid. It's going to lay the grid out for you. And if you just follow that with your hand, hit the accents you want to hit, you're golden. You're playing something that is rhythmically intact, as opposed to, you know, if I was to just kind of guess at a strumming pattern, say like a lot of beginners, they'll just kind of guess, and they're going to be hearing each of the accents they want to play kind of in a vacuum and not necessarily in context with the rest of the song. And that's where the robot sounds start to happen, is they try and just power out that one isolated bit of the song. Whereas it's best if you can, it's better to feel the song and to know exactly where the rhythm is and not play at all than to play something in the wrong spot. Right? It'd be like singing a harmony wrong and continuing to sing the harmony wrong. If you hear you're wrong, stop singing and figure out where you need to go to be right. As opposed to kind of like making the damage worse. So in a song like that, if you're not feeling and you're just kind of like wondering where the heck the beat is, then, you know, sit and listen to the song until you find out what that is. There's nothing wrong with not playing at all, especially if you're learning by listening. You know, even if you just get to the point where you feel like you can tap your foot where the snare drum might hit, that in and of itself is a musical skill that you've developed, just being able to hear that. And, you know, I think a lot of times the emphasis, especially with ukulele, is, oh, it's so easy, it's so fun. And yes, kind of, to both of those things, but a lot of times the listening is skipped over in, you know, and instead you're just shoved into the Connie Capilla group or whatever, and you're just strumming along with everybody else, or not along with everybody else, and you don't have a chance to listen. And sometimes it's nice to step back and really hear what's going on rhythmically. Yeah. So and those chords, just if you're interested, are E minor, D, and G. I feel like there's a sheet on liveukulele.com for this song, but I'm not sure off the top of my head. Certainly you can find it on Ultimate Guitar or something. They're just E minor, D, G. E minor, D, G. And you can even adjust your strumming for different parts of the song. Like if I was playing in the verse and I wanted to be real sparse, especially if I was playing with a full band or with a full ukulele group, maybe I would just play, because those are the strongest accents. But if I wanted to bring more sound in and to fill a little bit more of the gaps, maybe in like the pre-chorus or whatever the higher level is, or maybe the next verse, whatever it might be, you could add a little bit more of your down and ups in there, just as kind of like fairy dust on top of the accents. that sort of a thing. Okay, so hopefully that gives you some ideas as far as cultivating your own strumming patterns, not necessarily needing to lean on or ask, oh, what is the strumming pattern? Because you don't really need to ever play the exact strum of a song. Certainly there are instrumentations and parts that are like super iconic as far as the strum pattern goes, and it would be nice to copy those. But as far as moving the music along, it doesn't really matter if you're getting it exact, and trying to get it exact actually might take you a step back, as opposed to just kind of feeling an approximation out yourself just by locking into the grid and coming up with your own interpretation. Okay, if you have any questions or thoughts, throw them up in the comments. I'll try my best to answer. Otherwise, what goes hand in hand with strumming but chords? Okay, this is going to be kind of like the how to get the most bang for your buck kind of strumming lesson. All right, and what I mean by that is doing simple things that sound even more amazing. Right, that's what we're all looking for. And so what I think I'm going to show next is something called scrubbing, where you move a chord around just a little. It's almost random, but you move the chord around and just by okay. Regroup, Brad. A lot of times when you have chromaticism in music, which is all the notes, or in the case of chords, maybe you're playing wrong notes above or below the chord, that creates tension because it sounds wrong to your ears. But then when you go back to the right notes, it sounds even better. What I mean by that is if I'm playing a C, and when you're doing these scrubs, the more strings that you cover with fingers, the more pronounced the sound is. So, for instance, what I mean by a scrub is just moving the fingers down one fret or up one fret. And if I do that on just open C, it doesn't, the rest of the strings kind of drown it out. But if I play a C where I'm covering all the strings and I move all my fingers down one fret, it's a lot more pronounced because everything's shifting instead of some things staying the same and one or two things moving. Okay, so just for kicks, we'll play that C. If you don't know it, it looks like a B flat, but you've just scooted it up. If that's too, I like teaching this one because it's really a very foundational chord shape. It's a little bit challenging for beginners, but once you know it, everything beyond that is I don't know, it's not too tough anymore. So once you get this one dialed in, and if you spend time practicing it, you're going to be in good shape. But just B flat up 2 frets. If the top string finger's giving you trouble, just do the bottom 3 strings and you'll get most of the benefits I'm talking about here. So with this chord, if you scoot it down 1 fret, you're playing a B. But it doesn't really matter what it's called because we're just scooping down to get those wrong notes, those out of key notes. Because if you look at this, most of the notes in this chord, or the majority of the notes in this chord, are out of the key of C, assuming we're playing in the key of C. And by going to those wrong notes, our ear is like, sour, sour. And then when you go back, it resolves itself a lot nicer. So if I'm strumming C, that B doesn't need to be written in the song for me to know that it could go there and sound hip. It's just an interpretation thing. And I encourage you to try adding those chords there. And a lot of times what you'll do is, so you could play it on the 4 and of the beat. So if I'm playing along 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, maybe 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. And that might be overkill. You wouldn't play it every time around. But by having that little pull, it slingshots you back to the 1, the first beat in the bar. So that might be a nice way to differentiate, especially when you're playing a chord on a chord for a long time, to differentiate the parts or the lines or the bar groups that you're playing. Okay, so I'm gonna give you a little bit of a demonstration, like an over exaggerated demonstration of how I use this in some songs. It's a little early to sing this, but I'll try. This is Little Street in Singapore, which was done back in the 20s, I believe, by some band. I can't remember, but I know it as done by the Peter Moon Band. They brought in steel guitar, and it's real super like swing jazzy. But kind of goes like this. And I'm using a little bit more complicated chord voicings, but the main thing to remember is just I'm trying to cover all the strings so that when I scrub down or up, that the movements I'm making are more exaggerated because all the strings are moving down or all the strings are moving up. So, on a little street in Singapore. That's actually a written in scrub for this song. We meet beside a lotus covered door. A veil of moonlight on a lovely face. How pale the hands that held me in embrace. My sails tonight are filled with the perfume of Shalimar, with temple bells that guide me to the shore. And then I'll hold you in my arms and love the way I loved before. On a little street in Singapore. On a little street in Singapore. On a little street in Singapore. Right? So the C sharp that's in there is actually written into the harmony, but everything else I was doing, sliding the shapes around, was all just my interpretation of knowing how I can kind of swing the song back and forth and swing your ear. Okay. So one of the most obvious moves that I make is I lead into some of the chord changes that I make. Okay. If you want to follow along, this is actually a really great song for showing this, even though it's weird, but there's not that many chords. So this is a C6, just like the open string C6, but obviously I'm fretting so that when I move, you can actually hear it. There's no ability to scrub with the open strings. So this is C6, first finger on the top string, second fret, and then I bar the two bottom strings on the third fret with my middle finger, and then my ring finger reaches up to the fourth fret on the C string. Okay. This is a tough shape. This is like the next level above B flat. If you want, though, you could just play the normal C that I showed just a little bit ago that looks like B flat moved up 2 frets. Because remember, whenever you have like a jazz song or a complicated song that has numbers or fancy stuff, major 7 after the name of the chord, you can always take those away and just play the bare chord. The only thing you can't take away are like minors. So you always, the bass chord type would be, say, major, minor, and 7th. And so if I'm playing a C6, I can take away the 6 and it'll just be C major. If I'm playing C minor 7 and I want to make it more simple, I could just play C minor, right? And so that would be what you could do there to adjust it to fit your fretting abilities, is you could just play a C and still get 95% of the scrubbing goodness if the C6 is too much. But anyways, that's C6. And that's what you would play for a lot of the song. That's the home chord here, the root of the key. We're playing in the key of C. And so after that, you go up 1 fret, actually. That's the written in harmony that's kind of weird. On a little street in Singapore. It's real quick. It's just two strums. And then it goes to G7. We meet beside a lotus covered door. And then back to C. A veil of moonlight on a lovely face. G7. How pale the hands that held the embrace. Back to C. Okay, that's the verse. And the G7, as like a stock G7, is hard to scrub. You can. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you want, you can do that. Right? It's just that moving off the fretboard with the lower finger is a little bit awkward and a little bit harder to visualize if you're just kind of getting the idea of the scrub. So instead, you could play this super hip jazz chord, which is a G9. It's just 4, 5, 5, 5. And I would play it with my two middle fingers, with my middle finger on the top string, 4th fret, and my third finger barring the bottom 3 strings on the 5th fret. You can play it with all individual fingers, though, if you like. Whatever floats your boat. But this is really easy to scrub. You can just slide it down 1 fret. Okay, so let's try the verse again. I'll play through it, follow along as best you can. And when we get to the G7 change, do some sort of scrub into it if you can. You know, if you got to stumble your way there, that's totally fine. There's nobody in your house, and I can't see you. That's why this is better in ways than a Zoom meeting. Okay, it's a one-way train. Okay, so from the top, on a little street in Singapore, 2, 3, 4, on a little street in Singapore, G7, we meet beside a lotus covered door. Going back to C. A veil, you can scrub there too, of moonlight on a lovely face. G7, how pale the hands that held the embrace. Okay, and the scrub is almost imitating the voice in this song, at least, because the melody kind of scoops into the chord changes at times. And so by how pale, you kind of like, you know, accompanying the voice with that scrub and the chord change. And of course, you don't have to do any of the scrubs if you don't want. You can just go straight to the chords. But even though this is turning into kind of a swing jazz lesson, the idea is to get you comfortable with the different scrubs. Okay, and then after that, we go to the bridge. So from the C, you go to the C7, or you could play from here if you are playing the C6. What I usually would do is just push your first finger up 1 fret on the top string. It's a little bit, you know, kind of crooked and convoluted, but you don't have to lift anything or shift anything in order to get that C7 there. My sails, and then we go to F. Sails tonight. And for this one, you could just play a real easy straight across bar to get F6. And this is on the 5th fret. My sails tonight are filled with the perfume. And this is a really weird change. You go to the C sharp, either here or here. My sails tonight are filled with the perfume of Shalimar. So smooth. And then back to F. With temple bells that guide me to the shore. And then we go back to C, and then it turns around on G. And then I hold you in my arms and love the way I loved before. So let's try the bridge again, from C going into C7 to the F. And I'll demonstrate some ways you can scrub and make it even more groovy. Okay, to C7 to F. My sails tonight are filled with the perfume C sharp of Shalimar. With temple bells that guide me to the shore, that's C, and then G7, and then I'll hold you in my arms. And then we're back in the verse. Love the way I loved before. On a little street in Singapore. On a little street in Singapore. And so that kind of lift there, that's a scrub, but it's a little bit faster. It doesn't, because when we were changing chords, you kind of sit on it a little bit. But with this one, you're kind of jumping into it before the chord. So you go, whatever the chord is, down 1 fret, back to whatever the chord is, and then you would change to the next chord. So if I'm on a little street in Singapore, on, if I was to slow it down, a little street in Singapore. One more time. On a little street in Singapore. Okay, so that is the magic of scrubbing. And yeah, you can really do anything with that. It's one of those things where it's all about your judgment, and you can fit it in any place that it sounds good. Always trust your ears above anything else. And just with a couple jazz chords or even standard chords that you already use, having that little swing where you can kind of, in your back pocket, you can just create that interest of, ooh, wrong notes. Oh, I saved you. Ooh, wrong notes. Oh, I saved you. Can be really nice for, creating flow in songs. Because a lot of times when you're just strumming the same chords over and over and over, it can get a little mundane what you're doing. And so aside from changing the strum, which in a song like that wouldn't be super appropriate, because like that's the feel of the song. It's just down strums on the beat, but you wouldn't want to like make it super fancy, because it would kind of, in that sense, it would detract by adding too much. You would cover all the important stuff up, which is just like plod, 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 right? You're playing, the bass is probably going to boom, 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 boom along with you. And just by holding that down, it's real subtle, but it's super nice. And so in that sense, the left hand is what is going to add the interest, as opposed to trying to do a fancy strum with the right hand, right? So any questions about the scrubbing thing? There's really, I kind of show you some basics, but there's really no rules with it. It's one of those things you should just try and incorporate as much as you can in your own music. Yeah. So throw up any questions you might have. Otherwise, I feel like that's a pretty good place to kind of wrap up and call it a day. I think that's some pretty good content. That's sort of like a little bit of some toolbox stuff for strumming and keeping things interesting. If you're doing a boring strum and you're stuck with a boring strum, you can do some scrubbing. Or if the song is a little more interesting and you need a little bit more interest with the strumming, you can stay on the grid and come up with your own accents or move things around, and create interest that way. But yeah, thank you all so much for tuning in. I'll be back same time, same place, next week. Tell your friends, tell your ukulele club, bring the people. If you have any requests as far as lesson stuff goes, feel free to find me on my website, liveukulele.com, and shoot me an email there with your thoughts. Otherwise, yeah, I'll try and come up with something kind of, beginner intermediate that can also be adapted for more advanced players. A lot of times I just kind of assume that advanced players are going to know how to take a concept and expand it to be more advanced for what they're doing. So a lot of times, if I can keep it in that concept beginner, intermediate sweet spot, everybody's happy. Yes, I always give permission. You always have my permission. Just play music, see what you can come up with. Because that's something I see a lot too. Is everybody's got such high expectations of themselves, and they feel like when they play it should be this or should be that. But most people play by themselves. It's like the only person you're entertaining is you, and if the only person who's listening is you, it's only in your judgment. So if you're having a good time just goofing around with stuff that even sounds bad, if that's really doing it for you, keep trying it, see what you can find. A lot of times I have the most fun with music when I'm like out of control and I stumble across something that sounds kind of cool. It's like, haha, that's pretty cool. And then I'll do it again intentionally. And all of a sudden I've added a new lick or a new, musical interpretation to what I do. But it's because I was playing something freely without, any judgment upon what I was playing. So a lot of times that's super powerful too. It's just, go forth and discover and create. And yes, I give you permission to do both of those things. Yeah. So, anyways, thank you all for tuning in. You can find lots more lessons and song sheets and chord charts, all kinds of resources on my website, liveukulele.com. And otherwise, I will see you all next week, hopefully. Like I said, spread the word. Yeah, and have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Well, I'll see you before New Year. But have a very Merry Christmas at least. Yeah. Take care of one another, and I'll see you down the road. Aloha.